Hey, what are you doing in there? Come on out and let's talk kilns. Kilns can cost thousands of dollars, so you're probably wondering, do you actually need one for your pottery? In this video, I'm going to talk to you about a few cheaper alternatives and my recommendations so that you can get started on your pottery journey on any budget. Hi, my name is Michaela and I own a paint your own pottery studio. I fire thousands of pieces every year, so it totally makes sense for us to have our own kiln. But what if you only make a few pieces and you just can't afford one yet? Well, luckily there are 5 main options for you to get started. Number 1, if you have a local pottery studio in your area, this is probably your best bet. But there are different pros and cons to this. It is cheaper than buying a kiln, but you also have to transport your pottery back and forth to the studio, which can be a little impractical. If you have unfired pieces and you're transporting them back and forth, the pieces at that stage are extremely fragile. So you could possibly ruin your pieces on the way to the studio. You also have to be conscious of shelf space. Also, depending on the size of the kiln at that community studio, you could be limited to the size vessel that you make. For example, here, the only kiln that we have is this kiln right here. As you can see, me sitting next to it, it's not a very huge kiln. Even if you are limited to size, you still can make really great pieces. You are also at risk because other pieces could explode in the kiln. Pieces that explode in the kiln are very common among people who are beginner potters. You have to learn certain technique to prevent your pieces from having air bubbles. Also in a community studio, it could take you a while to get your pieces back since they usually fire in different rounds. If you were to own a kiln, it would be a lot faster because you would know exactly when you wanted to fire it and how long it would take for that to happen. So a community studio is a great idea for most people, but if you're like some, the nearest community studio could be about 200 miles away. So you might be wondering, well, that's not an option for me. What could I do instead? That's where number 2 on our list could be a good fit for you. Our number 2 on the list is ask a pottery friend to fire your pieces for a small fee. Well, I guess you don't have to pay them, but it would be a really nice gesture. If you're bothering too much to fire your pieces, that could probably feel intrusive over time, but it could be a way to build your friendship with another potter. There are a couple pros and cons with this as well. If someone is already firing their kiln in their home studio, then this could be a much cheaper option or even be free. Once again, timing here is still an issue because you are waiting on another person to fire your pieces for you. If you're new to pottery and you don't have a community studio nearby, and you also don't know many potter friends, then number 3 might be a good option for you. And that brings us to number 3. Ask a college, a school, a community college, or an artist guild if they have a kiln for rent. There are different pros and cons for this. Schools may not always let you rent their kiln space, but sometimes they might. Another option is you run the risk of other people's pieces exploding in the kiln. Some schools also have the option for you to do class auditing if it's a college, and you also could take summer classes with colleges. One of the cons with this is pickup and firing might be limited depending on school schedules and when the students are in versus out for the summer, so be mindful of that as well. Schools also may not be the best option for you, but luckily we have services like Kiln Share. That brings us to option number 4, which is to go online to kilnshare.com and search for kiln rentals, where you find kilns in your area from your phone. It's kind of like an Airbnb for kilns. There can also be cons to Kiln Share as well, although it could be a great option, as we stated earlier, to save money instead of buying a fully functioning kiln. One of the cons to Kiln Share could be maybe there's no kilns available in your area for rent. It could also be very far if it is in your area, and you'll be transporting fragile pottery, which could once again put your pottery at risk for breaking, cracking, or being damaged. You could also have to wait on that kiln to get your pieces back. And the last con is you not really being familiar with the people that are in the studio or who they are, and that might be sort of just an uncomfortable thing. But Kiln Share is a great option if you don't have the money or the space to put a kiln in your home. That brings us to option number 5, which is buying a test kiln. Test kilns are great because they're usually very small and compact. I know Scott makes a good test kiln. Scott is the brand that I swear by when it comes to kilns. Test kilns are great because you can fill them up with just a few little pieces and fire them in a short amount of time. Typically, test kilns are the fastest, and so if potters are wanting to get the results of something, even if they do have a big studio, they will fire it in a test kiln because it just takes the least amount of time. Typically, the larger the kiln is in size, the longer it takes to fire. I know this kiln specifically takes probably around 12 to 14 hours to fire, depending on what temperature we fire it to. The bigger Scott kilns that are 2-3 times the size take about 24 to 48 hours. So test kilns are perfect if you're wanting a cheap kiln option, a short turnaround, and if you just have a small space to put it in. Test kilns can handle bisque and glaze fire. Typically with test kilns, you don't need electrical insulation. You can just plug them into a normal outlet. So the only con with a test kiln is you probably can maybe fit 2 to 3 pieces, 5 inches in height and 3 inches across. So if you're wanting to do it as a hobby, I would say that's a very great beginner option for you. But if this is something you're really wanting to get into, then long term, you'll definitely need to get a bigger kiln eventually. But what if these options don't work for you and you're on a budget? There are a few other cheaper and primitive options. We have the trash can firing, the fire pit firing, even a tiny little microwave kiln that you can buy, and raku firing. These are a bit on the dangerous side, and they also don't have a temperature control aspect to them. Gut kilns in particularly and other kilns have different dials and these little buttons that control the temperature, and whenever you do these other options, you don't have that control. When you take away that ability to control the temperature, the pieces aren't dinnerware safe. If I'm personally making pottery, I want to make sure it's functional for everyday use and decorative, so those options might not be the best if you're wanting versatile pottery. And also with these different firing options, the surface effect of the glaze is going to appear differently than an electric kiln. Like I said, with electric kiln, the temperature is controlled and the heating is controlled, and so you can get a variety of different surface textures depending on the glaze that you use. With wood firing and raku, you're kind of limited to the temperature that that environment produces. So you're probably wondering, what's the sweet spot between cost and accessibility? So that depends on a number of different factors based on each person's individual situation. But your best option is to join a Facebook Marketplace group to try to find gently used secondhand kilns if you can afford it. Facebook Marketplace is an incredible option if you're wanting to buy a secondhand kiln. I personally know people that have gotten kilns from Facebook Marketplace and it's worked out really well for them. Also, you can just ask people that you're friends with that know anybody that has a kiln. If you are in the market of looking for a kiln, I would suggest starting out with a test kiln. It's not something that you have to get electrical hooked up to. It's small, it's compact. I think if you're wanting to start out, it's a great first option and it is on the cheaper side. But if you're looking for a bigger kiln, I would suggest the one that we have. We've had it for a few years now and it's served us really well. Scott has the best customer support out there, so I also personally really recommend the brand Scott. This kiln is a Scott KM822. It is 3 levels and you can buy different sized posts that make it into more levels, 4, 5, and 6, depending on how tall your pieces are that you're firing. The pro to this size also is you don't have to vent it, but if you get a bigger kiln than this, you really do need a place to vent your kiln, either having some sort of garage situation where you can open the garage or getting your kiln vented. So that is one of the main reasons why I would suggest getting a smaller kiln. It is important that you practice studio safety. You don't want to be inhaling those fumes in your house if you do have a bigger kiln. You might be wondering, are there any other additional costs I should factor in when buying a kiln? When buying a kiln, you should consider kiln maintenance and part replacement. So you will have to replace the internal elements. And then this box is connected to something called a thermocouple, which is how the kiln reads the internal temperature. That does need to be replaced as well. The thermocouple isn't very expensive depending on your kiln, but the coils, especially for the bigger kilns, can get really expensive. So you do want to consider that when you're considering buying a kiln. If you'll only be firing the kiln a couple times a year, you won't need to budget as much. But for regular use, I'd budget at least $300 to $600 annually. I've included a free checklist in the description below so you can know exactly what you'll need to keep your kiln going for a long time. So there you have it. If you're just starting out, you don't really need to spend thousands of dollars on buying a brand new kiln. You just need to find a method that's within your budget and is safe and accessible. With a little creativity and research, you can make beautiful pottery on just about any budget. If you found this helpful, check out my free pottery guide in the description below. It's packed with tips to get you going without overspending. And if you want to save even more money and figure out exactly what pottery tools you need, click this video here.